Welcome to the Thrive Tribe Business Growth Podcast for business owners who want to start, grow and scale their businesses with practical advice, real experiences and honest conversations.
Hello, I'm Lucy.
And hello, I'm Mark.
And together we run the Thrive Tribe, where we support business owners through training, coaching and community.
So whether you're starting out or looking to scale, you're in the right place. Welcome back to the Thrive Tribe Business Growth Podcast. And joining us in this episode is Hannah Worrall from Your Brand Lab. Welcome, Hannah.
Hi, both of you.
And Hannah is here today to enlighten us on a whole number of things to do with marketing and sales. And honestly, she's a world of experience, and we've used Hannah on a few occasions to great success. So we just wanted to, obviously, being with the people that we interact with, you know, branding, marketing is a whole different world to most people. And so by having you in, hopefully you can enlighten all of our listeners as to how you can help.
So Hannah, do you want to start by introducing yourself? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Hannah. I've actually been doing sales and marketing for about 20 years now. I know I don't look that old, but yeah, I am. So I first started out many moons ago when lead generation was a phone and a book. And
Old times.
Very old time, old school. We had to dial numbers. But thankfully it looks a lot different now. There's a lot more technology and there's a lot more different ways that we can generate leads into our business and also market our business.
So how did you get started?
I kind of fell into it really. I was really young and I needed money. Like most people do when they're young. And I went and I found a job and I started doing lead generation and telemarketing at Anglian Windows. And it was something that then never left me and followed me round throughout my career that I ended up automatically going back to. And then I've turned it into a career over the years as I sort of grew older and figured out what I wanted to do and what I didn't. I didn't really know what I wanted to do growing up. A lot of what I did was about surviving. I had a baby young and I needed food on the table. So I took whatever I could to start with, and then I found something that I really enjoyed doing. And I started out in really old school lead generation, and then I moved into a bit more modern lead generation and sales. And then I was like, I don't really like interacting with loads of people all the time. I found it quite, not necessarily draining, but not for me. And I then moved into more digital forms of lead generation, and that led me into marketing. And then before you know it, I've been doing marketing for the last 20 years. And I left corporate after getting to head of marketing, and I left just over 2 years ago now and set up Your Brand Lab that it is today.
That's a fantastic journey in terms of what you've been through to get where you are. And I say those phone books that you used, I remember, doing those sales calls, and it has become, I don't know, it's just a lot bigger nowadays, isn't it? But in some ways easier as well. So that's just a whole different world. And I think that's what I'd like to get down to, is just how we can market and what we can do just to make things easier rather than getting the phone book out again, which no longer exists anyway.
No.
So in terms of, if you're an SME and you've not really had a massive budget for marketing, what would you do? What would you do from the outset?
I would get really clear on who you're trying to speak with. So we talk about our ICPs, our ideal client personas, but we need to be really granular with those. So we need to not just know who they are, their typical demographics. We need to know why they buy, where they buy, and we look at that. And then we focus on those channels, especially if we don't have a lot of budget. And especially when you first start out with business, there's so many different areas of business. And we've usually gone into business because we're good at a thing. And then we get into business and it's like, oh, okay, we've got accounts, we've got marketing, we've got to do sales, we've got like any legality stuff. And it's really overwhelming really quickly. And then you've got so many voices surrounding you that are like, you should be on this, you should be doing this 3 times a day. You've then got to do this, especially when it comes to marketing. And actually, no, you don't need to. You need to be really realistic with your time and what you can actually accomplish and achieve. So I would start out on looking at who your ideal customer is, where they are, and focus where they are.
How do you find that though? How do you actually, if it's a new market for somebody and they don't actually know, how would you advise them to find out?
So I would look through lots of online research. That's me. I thrive in the online research world. I can go down a rabbit hole. But speak to people. I think so when I left corporate, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted an agency. It had been something that I'd wanted for a long time. I didn't know who I wanted to work with. I'd come from corporate. I was used to working with corporate businesses, and I was freelancing on the side and working with really small businesses, but I didn't know where I wanted to sit. So my first year of business, I offered a product that would give me brand visibility, because then I'd get my name out there. But I focused on where that would most be. And I got market research at the same time. So I got to speak to people and speak with them, find out what their pain points were, what they were struggling with, and then evolved that. So I offered content creation. I primarily offered that on Instagram because that's where people show it. And that got me a lot of clients very quickly because people needed content for their business. They wanted to share it on Instagram. They were also tagging me because that's where they got it from. And in that process, I got to speak to people. I got to find out where things were possibly falling down for them, what they were struggling with. Because again, they're business owners that have gone out into business because they're good at something. And then they're hit with Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, various other things as well. Need a website? Do I need emails? Do I need to do a podcast? Do I need to do, like, there's so many different things out there and so many different ways to market your business. I solely focused on one platform, and that's as someone that does social media marketing. One platform, one target audience, and then I found out what they needed, what they wanted, and what was best for them. And then I very quickly then determined who I wanted to target and where they would be. That looks different now as the business has grown. But that initial part was I needed money because I'd just quit my job. I needed market research, and I didn't have money to pay for market research. And I needed brand visibility. So I think if you focus on your goals, your initial goals to start with, and what you need most and where you can get the majority of that from, you focus there first.
Yeah, and I think a lot of business owners don't do that, do they? They kind of just go in and go, yeah, I'll offer it to everybody. Yeah. We've all heard if you say you want everybody, you're going to get nobody.
Yeah.
So how would you kind of advise somebody to niche down? Would you advise somebody to niche down, or would you advise them to kind of be broader?
I think to start off with, yes, to a certain extent. Keep it simple, because again, to start off with, most people, unless they've gone and got funding and a volume of funding, that said, so they haven't got the capacity. With all the will in the world, you're not 100% of the time, regardless. And you need to do one thing, and you need to do one thing really good. So focus on doing one thing at a time. Because if you try and be everywhere for everybody all at once, again, you're not going to reach anybody. And you're better off focusing on a smaller amount that you can convert higher. And then as you grow and expand, do what you want. Well, in line with the strategy, I would always say that. Have a good strategy, a good solid foundation. But when you've got room to play with resources, then that's where you start experimenting a bit. But to start off with, absolutely not. Keep it as lean as possible.
I think as well was the social side that you were saying about the fact that people have got hung up on hearing advice that you've got to post 30 times a day. And as you say, it doesn't need to be that much. It just needs to be, your message needs to get out there in an honest way. And And I always say to people that we work with, it's like, you set yourself a couple of hours on Monday morning and do your media for the next week. You know, it doesn't need to take forever, but you've just got to think about what you're doing. You only need one post a day. As long as you're consistent and it can engage people, that's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And sometimes you don't even need a post a day. I wouldn't necessarily always recommend it. On LinkedIn, I've worked it out recently. For the last year, I've probably posted less than once a week. And I've reached over 80,000 impressions, and my business is profitable. Obviously, that's not my only channel now, but before, because I've been putting myself in the right places in front of the right people. So social media isn't necessarily, my business isn't necessarily completely reliant on social media. So I think there's a good balance. I think you need to have a good balance, but keep that balance really lean to start off with, and then be consistent with that balance.
So in terms of social media, because obviously we hear about a lot of things, you have to be on social media, which platforms would you suggest people be on? Because obviously there's lots of different platforms, but some platforms are more aligned with different audiences, aren't they? So what platforms would you say were best for which type of business?
I think it depends what you're selling, what you're offering, and where your value is. I think everybody should be in different places. Obviously, you've got your main platform, so you've got your meta platforms. There's multiple other meta platforms, but the main ones are Instagram and Facebook. So if you're selling from a business to consumer basis and you've got an aesthetic looking product, you're probably likely to be on Instagram, Meta, and also possibly TikTok. That's again another big platform for search. If you're business to business, I mean, I'm business, and my first year I focused on Instagram rather than LinkedIn, but LinkedIn should be my main channel. So again, it depends on who you're targeting, what you're targeting them with, and what your main goals are to start with. And then you can build out. Now, my primary platform is more LinkedIn and also TikTok, but that's because I've built the systems in my business to be able to allow for me to put those out there at a way that doesn't burn me out.
Yeah, and that's really important, isn't it? To make sure that you can sustain whatever you're delivering. You know, I've heard that, or we advise that you post consistently rather than posting every day. As long as you post consistently, so whether that be once a week, once a day, every couple of days, as long as it's consistent, that's where you're going to get your traction.
Yes, absolutely. If you post, say, 7 times in 1 week and then don't post for 3 weeks, you're having to build up the audience again. The platforms then don't recognise who your audience are, where they should be pushing your content out for, and you're having to then start again every single time. And there's platform changes all the time. I don't really like using the word algorithm. I think it's a bit of an overused term and a bit of an excuse in some ways to say, oh, my content's not going up because it's the algorithm changes. It is usually because there's some inconsistency or your content isn't speaking with your audience, because if it was, then you would start to get some traction over time should you be consistent. But stop starting is never a good idea.
No. What do you think in terms of the different ways you can obviously put stuff on a platform, say text-based, video, images? Because there's a lot of discussion in terms of what I watch. I know, obviously, like we said earlier, we were harking back to the telephone and yellow pages. Whereas obviously when I started using Facebook, when it first came out, it was very much text-based. And now, from obviously having children and seeing the way the world is, it's more video. And the attention span has gone from being able to read a page of text. Have you got any insight into that in terms of what you think?
So we now have attention spans of, I'd say, less than goldfishes sometimes. Yeah. Literally, if it's not telling you what they're talking about and how that's going to benefit them within the first few seconds, or even less than that. Most average watch time is less than a second on video. So if you look at again, it's what aligns best with your audience, and I think that's what it boils down to. It always boils down to your audience and what they're engaging with and what they're not. Some people will have a lot more traction on just text only posts. Some will have more traction on graphics. I wouldn't recommend overly branding graphics. I think there's a general fatigue across the space. If they're seeing lots of branding on a graphic now, people automatically assume it's an ad. So then we get into another side of social there. But there's a place and there's a time and place and platform for both long form video, short form video, text only, and graphics, and also like the carousels as well. So again, I think it's down to audience, what they're interacting with. If they're interacting more with your short form video, then you post more with your short form video. But again, it's something that you need to play with consistently over time to get that data. I always believe that you should follow your data. And your data won't tell you something within a short space of time. If you put 3 videos out and then go, oh, video's not working, actually have you given it enough time to see whether it's working or not? But consistently over a period of time, you'll figure out what's working for you and for your business. But also it needs to work for you as a person, especially if you are a solo founder. As long as that channel is bringing you revenue in and customers, and what you're putting out there is actually helping people to go through that funnel, then that should be your main priority as a business owner, but especially as someone that's like sort of in the early stages or starting.
So you talk about data there. What sort of data should we be looking at?
So platforms will sort of analyze your posts based on different interactions. But I think as a founder, as a business owner, you need to be focusing on the data that's showing where the revenue is coming from. Because that should be your first and foremost priority starting a business. If you can't pay yourself and put money back into your business to grow it, then you've got no business. So I would say what your inquiries are looking like would be a primary example. So if you're posting consistently on Instagram, but nobody sends you a direct message or a DM, nobody does, there's no real point in posting on it. Unless you're using that platform for another business goal. And again, that's not necessarily something you would do to start off with. It depends on your goals. But if you're looking to grow in certain different areas and reach different people because you are expanding as a business, but especially in those initial stages, if you're not getting anybody message you or reach out or comment, I think a comment's a good indicator if people are engaging. And lots of platforms monitor shares as well. If people are sharing your content, if they're sending it to somebody else, it means that they've really like interacted with your video better. So I would look out for those. People click like within 1 second. They might not have even read it. They might have just seen it you. They've known you somewhere along the road and gone, oh, it's so and so. And that's it. So I think those key indicators are obviously business conversion that's coming directly from a channel that you can monitor and sort of measure, and then sort of real interactions where people are trying to communicate with you, whether it's through comments or sharing it to somebody else and that type of thing. Click-through rate's a good one if you've got a link on there, but again, that's another.
Again, there's so much, isn't there, for people to do, and this is the thing I always find about marketing. People aren't usually passionate about marketing unless that's your business. And I think that we have, as you rightly said at the beginning, there's so many things you do, accounting, marketing, admin, and all the stuff that you're not passionate about, but it is a part and part with business. And at the Thrive Tribe, we put a lot of effort into know, like, and trust. It's that ability to get out there and share your story so people know more about you, because, with social media, even with the big influencers out there, there's a story there for you to follow. You see what they do every day. And I think the know, like, and trust element for me at marketing is so important, because I want to, that old adage of being able to see the person know them, like them, and trust them before you make a purchase. Where we didn't have the internet. That was a thing for those of you that are young. But you had to go in somewhere, and if you liked a salesperson or somebody working in a shop, you'd go back there again and again and again, even if the price was slightly more. And again, in this day and age, it's exactly the same. So what would you say about building somebody's brand, whether it be a personal brand or a brand that they're going to use for their business?
I think first and foremost, you're right. People buy from people all the time. I think that's one of the biggest things that you should always focus on, is people buy from people. So however you're getting that across to people is always good. I think we need to focus on the different elements of how we build trust and how we build credibility utilizing marketing platforms, whether that's through written testimonials and sharing them, whether that's through video testimonials as well, because they're always a good one to have up your sleeve if you can get them. But then we look at other indicators as well. So like there's different review platforms. You can get reviews on Facebook. You can get reviews on Google. They're really good indicators because someone's gone out their way to actually put that out there. And not everybody will. Sometimes you have to sort of say, can you leave me a review? So getting those, so that sort of helps build trust, but it also helps build credibility. And then when you're marketing yourself and your business, you're showcasing things like a variety of things like behind the scenes. What do you actually do? I mean, 90% of me is set up to a screen. I don't really show that often because it's not that exciting. But there's so many different ways that you can build credibility. But also, when we think marketing, we don't think of marketing a lot of the time in the way that it was always set out to do, like before the technology.
Yeah.
When we think marketing now, we just think social media. Loads of people just think social media or a website, when actually it is networking. It is going out to places and people. It is picking up the phone and building a rapport and conversation with somebody. It's that building that trust through that funnel, so to speak. I always look at it as a funnel rather than a colander. You don't want a colander, you need a funnel.
Do you want to explain a little bit more about funnel for those that don't know what we're talking about?
So in business, most people will come through your business as a funnel, and then there'll be a natural drop off throughout the different stages. So it sort of goes in to a funnel or an upside down triangle. It's shown in the world visually as so many different sort of things, but we start off with awareness usually, or something similar to the word awareness. There's lots of different ways it can be looked at, but so you start off with awareness. So this is the people that don't know who you are at all. So this is the top of the funnel. This is how you try and attract them, and there's so many different ways that you can do that through different channels of marketing. And then we move towards sort of consideration. So they've come further down the funnel, they're interested, you meet one of their pain points, and they're curious about you. They're considering what you're offering and whether what you're offering is right for them. And again, this is where we nurture. So this is where we look to nurture. And again, we've got so many different platforms and ways that we can do that. And then we bring them into like the close, the conversion. This is where we get the sale. So for us, that means the revenue. For them, that means they get the exchange of the product. But then we need to keep them in that loop as well. So we then look at the customer cycle and the retention. And again, a lot of the platforms that we utilize in marketing actually are multi-purpose. And a lot of the content that we put out there, again, it hits multiple points in the funnel. And the sales, marketing, and how we get people to come into our business now is so not linear. It used to be a very linear, very sort of, and theoretically, if you look at it from a academic marketing perspective, you always taught it's like this. But then actually when you look at it in the real world, because there's so much more technology out there, there's so many different ways of different touch points, it's actually very different, and it's a non-linear process, but it's still, on the foundations of it, is a funnel.
Yeah.
And we need to attract, we need the awareness, we need them to nurture and consider, and then we need the conversion at the bottom.
So you just mentioned touch points there.
Yeah.
What's different what is touch points, and how many touch points would somebody need with somebody before they could actually get a sale, do you think?
So I think it's very dependent on product and service and what you're offering, but usually around 6 to 8 touch points is a good sort of starting point to understand. I think the more you understand your marketing and the more you and your sales process and your customer journey, and this is why a lot of marketers will say the data is important, because this is where we start to really understand the customer life cycle and the customer journey. But the different touch points are on different platforms, but also not necessarily just platforms, just like meeting people as well. So you go out to an event, you meet someone, you say hello, that's one touch point. They then follow you or link with you on LinkedIn and they see a post, that's another touch point. They then go, oh, I wonder what the Thrive Tribe is, and follow one of the business pages, say on Facebook. It can be so... And then because they've passed you a business card at the event that they met when they had their first touch point, they've then received a monthly email. And you've then told them what's lining up. And then they're like, oh, I'm a little bit curious about that. They click, they'll hit your website. And they'll have a look, but they're not quite ready to be that interested yet. But then they'll go to another event and they'll see you again. And then they'll see you on Instagram or LinkedIn. And it just that's what I mean by different touch points. But the more data that you collect, especially in the early stages, that's when you'll start to understand what actually that looks like properly, because I think it's very unique to every business.
So in terms of touch points, how do we go from touch points where they've seen us to sales?
So through different touch points, they'll have different types of interactions. And it's catching them at the right time with the right touch point. And that can be very difficult to just sort of determine off the cuff. But this is why we say when we look at different types of content and different types of touch points and meeting them, have a good balance. Because lots of highly engaging, funny posts aren't going to convince them that what you're offering is of value to them thingy. But the odd one will be like, oh, actually, I can get along with them. That's still a no, like, trust. They don't take things too seriously, and they'll actually, they'll help me, but they'll also have a bit of a laugh and I can have a conversation with them. They're not robots. That's important. But so is the conversion part, where it's like, this is the value that we'll bring to you, and this is what we're offering you, and this is how much it's cost. They're just as important, but they need to be balanced out.
And I think with the marketing side, it's on that conversion and the funnel, it's used for anything, isn't it? Apart from maybe if you still these people that goes into town and has an impulse purchase, something that's too cheap, it was a really good price, or you perceive it as a really good price, and you just make that purchase. Whereas this funnel, and because it's now worldwide, isn't it? So, and that's the beauty of products or services you can actually buy anywhere. It's really important to get this bit right. So your sales, in theory, could go international, and that's the bigger picture, which I think a lot of SMEs don't get. So if their product or service has always been sold local, they get quite stuck in their ways in terms of who they market to. But then sometimes markets shift, and then their sales dry up because they haven't used the funnel, the niching down into certain groups, and I think again it's a huge topic, isn't it? Which I know we're getting to the end of our conversation, but it is huge. And I just wanted to say, from my point of view, for the people watching this and listening to it, is the fact that it is so important, and as people grow, so will their budget in terms of what they can spend, and then there's paid ads to look at, but everything must come together, and I'm a big advocate of when you get to a certain size, and there isn't a magic, calculation that I use, but eventually, you can look at outsourcing that part. And it's a specialist like you, because at the end of the day, for us as a business and what we do, we've spent, our episode 1 talking about the fact we want to help people. That's generally what we want to do. The network and the face-to-face stuff Lucy loves. We've obviously, put us outside the comfort zone to do the podcast. But then all the other marketing side, yes, we have conversations, we have the strategy, but then we pass that on to specialists, because I don't want to know everything. I just want to help. And I think that's so important to realise that with the marketing funnels and the consumers and the products and the services, when you need it, go out there and seek further help.
Yeah, I agree with that. I always think that even if you can't afford for somebody else to do it for you, which is the case for a lot of businesses in early stages or even sort of later on, dependent on your profit margins, always speak to somebody that is a specialist, whether you just look at consulting or sort of building up towards sort of outsourcing to the level that you want to. I think that's a really good option to use, because you wouldn't try and fight a legal court battle without seeing a solicitor. You shouldn't risk your whole business by sort of throwing loads into something that isn't right for your business.
Yeah, I love that. It's really, really good advice. Can I ask you a couple of quick questions?
Yeah.
What has genuinely helped you grow your business?
Strategy.
Love it. Glad you said that.
I will sing that to the hills. Like, literally, a good, strong brand foundation and strategy has carried my business through for the past year, I would say.
Brilliant. That's really good.
And it will continue to carry it through as well, because it's a good, strong foundation.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Having that strong foundation. You spoke in episode 1 about having a really good, strong foundation with your mission, visions and values, and knowing where you want to go, and then obviously making sure that you're following that path together.
Yeah. Even if the route changes slightly, which it can do, your strategy needs to be flexible, but it needs to be built on reality.
And with SMEs, we have the ability to make decisions quickly and change if we need to change, which is one of the things that we've always said. I come from the corporate world. There's usually 35 different meetings just to make that one change.
I don't miss 17 calls a day.
I know. Have you got a practical tip that we could basically give in one simple thing somebody could do with sales and marketing this week that would improve their business?
Start tracking.
Data.
What are they going to track?
They're going to track as much as they can with the time that they've got, but it doesn't need to be like a monster Excel spreadsheet. It's something that you can like look at yourself and do it whatever works right for you. But you want to track where your leads are coming from or where your sales are coming from, depending on what you're offering. And you want to track the sort of the effort that is taken to get them, because then you can put your effort into the right places over time once you've got that data. A lot of people fall down because they don't have the data to start with, and they're getting leads in left, right and centre, and they can't make sense of it. So you want to be putting your effort into the right places to get the data in the first place to start with.
Brilliant. I think we're going to draw it to a close, but there was so much in there, as in really good practical advice for people to have. And off the top of my head, we've got obviously the strategy, the know, like, trust, the funnel. All of this is just like really, really powerful stuff. And as I say, if you get it right, which is what you were both saying, it means that everything that you do can be structured, can be changed, tinkered with as we go. But just in terms of having that strategy to start with, will really, really help your business out. And I say it's such a crucial part, isn't it? You know, we're all good at what our businesses are, but that marketing is just really, really important. There's so many offers out there, you know, and no matter what price point that you have for your product or service, that strategy really, you know, should be at the forefront of your mind of everything that you do.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you, Lucy. That's it for this episode. So we'll see you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for listening to the Thrive Tribe Business Growth Podcast.
If you found this useful, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and feel free to share it with another business owner who might need it.
And if you'd like more support, you can find us inside the Thrive Tribe community, or get in touch to find out more about our programs at thethrivetribe.com.
We'll see you in the next episode.